Good morning, everyone. We have an excellent panel here on stage with us today, and I can't wait to dive in. But maybe a quick round of introductions for the panel. We have Osawa-san, who is Chief Executive for Asia Pacific MUFG Bank. We have Dr. Rajan, who is Minister for IT and Digital Services, Tamil Nadu. And we have Rodrigo, who is President of Microsoft Asia. And now, without further ado, let's kick off with these questions that we have for these gentlemen here. It's a very interesting mix of policy and regulatory perspectives, technology and innovation, and basically what do we do in Asia to support our net zero aspirations as we head off to COP next week. So, first question for you, Dr. Rajan. Given Asia's rapid industrialization and the urgency to meet Paris Agreement goals, what are the main regulatory challenges in achieving these targets? And in balancing industrial growth with environmental sustainability, what specific policy interventions are critical at the state level?
Well, thank you for having me here. I must say first that India is a very centralized country in its constitution, so a lot of the policies are set at the federal level, and we have relatively little flexibility at the state level. But having said that, the challenge of all emerging economies is how do you industrialize, how do you improve the quality of life without going through the kind of not clean energy growth that advanced economies already had. And I think the leadership has to come from the government in that sense. Our Prime Minister has declared that by 2070, India will be a net zero country. At the state level, we have accelerated that by 20 years and said by 2050, because we have the great luxury of a lot of renewable energy already. We have about 27% of India's renewable energy is produced in our state, which is only about 6% of the population and about 10% of the economy. We incentivized renewable energy decades ago, starting with wind and then with solar. And now with the possibilities of offshore wind, we think there's a lot more potential there. We can get there, we think, as I say, by 2050. The real issue is that incentives in terms of financial incentives are not really that much necessary anymore, because the cost of production of solar or wind has come down so much because of improvements in technology that is actually cheaper than conventional energy. Where the problem comes is in volatility of supply, because the wind is not stable throughout the day or year, and the sun is not stable throughout the day. So a lot of it is about storage, is about wheeling, is about trading, and facilitating that at relatively low cost of friction between producers and users. And especially with a lot of companies like Microsoft having their own ambitions of being net zero faster, then whether we can set up these agreements for generation in remote places and then transmission to the point of use of things like data centers, which are going to be big sources. So we are happy with our progress. We have set a target. We set up a separate council, a climate change resilience council. We also have the risk in Tamil Nadu. About 80% of our rainfall falls within 45 to 60 days. So we have volatility in weather patterns makes it very, very difficult for us. We already had a problem. Now it becomes an extreme problem. Even last week, we had about 10 centimeters of rain in about 40 minutes. You know, that's the kind of climate change that's happening. And so we had flooding in urban areas and all that. So we are incentivized because of our exposure, and we have taken a lead. High volumes now, making it easier to trade because storage is still limited in its capacity. We do some pump storage, but I think overall we want to lead the country's transition, and we have incentivized that with both economic and transactional friction-reducing policies.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan. I think now we shift a little bit of the focus to the financial sector. So, Osawa-san, what role should the financial sector play in working with governments and policymakers to foster a regulatory environment that encourages sustainable and responsible investments? And how does MUFG balance profit with long-term sustainability goals, particularly in markets where environmental regulations are still evolving?
Thank you, Oi, and thanks everyone. Good morning. I'm really honored to be here today. And I am Osawa, the Chief Executive for the MUG Bank, Asia Pacific. I'm based in Singapore, covering markets in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia and Oceania. And we have participated at the different kinds of study group and working group for the sustainability and finance, including the Asia Transition Finance Study Group, or the GFIT Green Finance Industry Task Force led by MS. And those participation, I believe, led to the good impact on Asian taxonomies, ASEAN taxonomies in the region. And you may well know, but the Singapore Asia taxonomy for the sustainable finance was released December last year. And with that clarity in the classifications of the project, of the technology, I believe the private financial institutions like us can work together and work on the transition finance in the region. And in addition, MUG have led so-called thought leadership program called MUG Now, Net Zero World, which is an event in which we invite all the policymakers, private institutions, business owners in the different markets, different countries in the region. We hosted 10 sessions in 10 different markets in Asia in the past 12 plus months. And with those consistent communications and engagement with all the stakeholders in this industry, I think that we could really effectively work on the practical transition finance activities in the region.
Super. Thank you so much, Sawa-san. I think sort of turning a little bit towards the technology and innovation space, and so my first question goes to, of course, Rodrigo from Microsoft. And Microsoft has been at the forefront of using data and AI to help solve some of the most complex issues of our time. And as we strive for some equitable economic opportunities and a just transition for Asia and Global South, how do you think technology can help companies and governments across the region balance the needs of people, profit, and planet?
First, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm also 3 months living in Singapore, so a pleasure to be here, moving from New York and before that, Brazil in Latin America. So look, I believe there are 3 mega trends right now for the next 2 decades. One is the rise of AI in biotech. The second one is energy transition. And the third one is the rise of global south in emerging markets, because I believe their role in the global economy is going to be different because of number 1 and number 2. So these things are all interconnected. I believe AI will completely reinvent and reimagine every industry and every profession. If you look back to the past waves of technology disruption, in the 70s, 80s, the PC, and then in the 90s, the internet, and then mobile in the early 2000s, and then cloud, and now we're talking about AI. AI is going to be more disruptive to the business models of companies than I think all of those technologies together. And the amount of progress that can be created, can be generated because of AI is significant. And let me give you one example that I like to use because it explains the impact on AI, that AI is going to happen in different industries, but also the impact that could have on society. So we have this project in the state of São Paulo in Brazil with the Secretary of Education. We have 3.5 million kids writing about 300 million essays a year. You don't have enough teachers to grade those essays. We built a system using AI that the kid gets to the computer, write the essay, he gets online recommendation and tips, not correction, not grading yet, to say, look, make it longer, read this paragraph again, think about this, think about that, and then the kid submits the essay, gets to the teacher, and with already a score. Your score is whatever, 9. This is the score for context, for grammar, for creativity, and this is the recommended write-up, like a feedback to the kid. So what's the point here? One is the kid get a very consistent grading, all the kids. So the grading is the same. The second, the teacher now knows that these 10 kids in the room, they have a challenge with grammar. Those 10 kids have a challenge with creativity, and you can start to personalize education. Now, you see after a year the results of the quality of the essays. They're much better, right? So this is one example of how technology is getting to places that were never before to help improve education in one country, and it's not even English. So when you think about healthcare, when you think about sustainability and climate, we're probably going to talk about later about the projects we have on climate management and prediction of wildfires. So the impact is really massive. It's really going to change the world as we know over the next decade.
That sounds wonderful. Moving to Dr. Rajan, from your perspective, what innovation solutions will have the most significant impact in decarbonizing Asia? I mean, given that we know that a lot of that sort of exists in certain forms, how are we channeling that into decarbonization? And how do you envision India's digital transformation contributing to both economic growth and sustainability? And what lessons can be learned from Tamil Nadu, and how can they be scaled across Asia?
There's a lot of questions. So let me take the first one. I think what would really help a lot is much better storage solutions and transmission solutions. And I think at least in Tamil Nadu, we have now started incentivizing storage rather than production. So we have given huge incentives in the last 2-3 years to a couple of mega projects in green hydrogen, green ammonia, things that can be easily stored, transported, and used as needed, because we can produce quite a lot, but we need to overcome this volatility and location problem. I think the other thing is, whether you like it or not, the storage places are so vital, or storage mechanisms so vital, because the demand is going to be clustered in data centers, in urban areas, and the generation of renewable energy by design is where there's a lot of land, where there's a lot of wind, where there's a lot of open space. So you have to have these two. But in addition to that, I would say, just talking about Rodrigo's example, that probably made teachers better teachers overall, not just about this project. So I think the great luxury of technology and the great luxury of data and the kinds of analysis that you can do with a lot of data is analyze patterns and bring out things that you had not thought possible. And you could do it in such a granular way. You can say, in this particular village, in this particular time frame, what is the optimal way of generating energy from a microgrid? And then you can basically make it self-reliant. Or in places, like I say, where we have great volatility in the weather or in rainfall, can we get better prediction models and better analytical models of how to deal with the consequences of this? So I think the data overall will make it much more easy. But the digitalization of the economy will actually reduce the overall demand for energy. And simple things, like if you take India, if you take Tamil Nadu, going from the old-fashioned kind of window frame air conditioner to a current era air conditioner, which is technological innovation in HVAC as opposed to in digital has probably cut down the per cooling unit consumption by 60%. And that's just one area. But I think overall, the more you have things done online, the less you need travel, the less you need kind of paper, the less you need to do processing. So in our government, for example, both in my old role as finance minister and now in my new role as IT and digital services, we are aiming to be completely paperless as quickly as possible, and to reduce the amount of human interaction as far as possible. Like, we want the government services to be available online, reduce travel, reduce friction. A lot of places in the world, including in India, if you have to see a human being, sometimes that leads to a lot of other problems like rent seeking and other friction costs. So you make it online and you can track people's performance and so forth. So I think this transition reduces the amount of buildings needed, reduces the amount of energy needed to run these buildings, reduces the amount of transport needed. So the digital infrastructure and the ability to get everybody connected. And for example, we're laying a statewide broadband network now, fiber network. By the end of the year, we'll have connected all 12,650 villages of my state on 1 gig pipe. So now we can basically beam any content to anybody without requiring them to come from their village to the college for particular courses and stuff like that. So I think the potential is enormous, both in terms of reducing the need for energy and in terms of accelerating the efficiency of energy usage. I think technology will have a big role to play. I'd like to say, I think because Tamil Nadu has been a pioneer in so many ways, that's why we have set an aggressive target 20 years before the national target. And it's through measures like this that I think we can achieve that.
Dr. Osawa-san, back to you. With Asia being a hotbed of innovation and home to vast natural carbon sinks, how can financial institutions like MUFG help to scale breakthrough green technologies and climate solutions? And what role do you see with MUFG playing in financing these efforts across Asia while ensuring economic inclusivity?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think it's really exciting time for the green technology now, and we are involved in, obviously, the project Greenprint together with Microsoft. The project led by the GFTN and MAS, which is a digital platform with which all the stakeholders can have access and can collect the necessary data for the sustainable management, including disclosure requirement for the ESG report. And we, as a private institution, have tons of clients with us, including SMEs with our partner banks in the region. So, and many of them are struggling with the accessing the data or the disclosing the needed data for their carbon emissions. So those digital platforms will be the key for them to do the effective enhancement of the sustainability management. And I believe the platform will span across the countries in Southeast Asia. So we are really excited to be the core investor in the project. But talking of the technology, we also understand there's a series of technologies around ammonia, hydrogen, or biomass, co-firing. Some of them are already mono-firing technology, but we need them as at least interim solutions towards the carbon neutrality. But you never know what will be surviving, say, 10 years from now. It's really hard to predict. So, but at the same time, I would like to support, and in that regard, the blended finance mechanism will be quite helpful to make that happen. And I really respect the initiatives like FAST-B, Financing Asia Transition Partnership, led by MS. And as a private institutions, we are really wondering how we can contribute to those blended finance mechanism in the market. And I think it's really interesting time, because we have discussed for years how we can structure this kind of mechanism with all the stakeholders in the market, but we are about to see the specific and concrete structure with which we can really work on the very challenging projects in the region. And I believe some of which will be announced in a COP29 in Baku starting from next week. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I hope to be there when you announce it.
Yeah.
Rodrigo, question for you. Sort of what are the most exciting breakthrough sustainability technologies emerging in Asia that you see? And what is Microsoft's vision and strategy in advancing sustainability goals with technology? And how are you partnering with organizations to accelerate and scale the impact of these innovations?
Okay, so first, we are severely expanding our footprint in the region. Asia is the fastest growing region for the company, is where we believe for the next decade we're going to find not just growth but a lot of innovation. We have for a decade now been very public about our commitment to sustainability. In the region, we committed to source all of our energy from zero carbon sources, 2025. We also created a $1 billion climate fund to put in startups to make sure that we continue to see the ecosystem developing. We believe that we have also to be the reference in the industry and set the standards for our partners and competitors to follow. And we have been very public with our numbers and with our commitments. One great example, and I think we already had the video before, and we have been talking about Greenprint, which was launched by MAS, recently, and it's a great example of the kind of partnerships that we are after. So using data and AI, they were able to simplify ESG reporting. So with just your phone, especially if you are a small or mid-sized company, sometimes the workload behind the reporting of all ESG might be complicated. You just, for example, take a photo of your energy bill, and they automatically fill in all the reporting for you. So this is a massive impact, especially for small companies. They're also using GPT-4 not just to create the narratives and respond, but also to create insights. So the use of technology is getting to a point where it's not just going to benefit large corporations, but also smaller companies. There was another example that I love to talk about, which is we are able to predict wildfires in Amazon today using satellite images, weather data, and a bunch of other sources of data. You can really predict that in that region it's likely that you will see wildfire in the next few weeks. So this is the kind of impact that we believe we can generate. We more than anything, we believe that the technology will help solve, especially data and AI, will help solve some of the most complex problems of society, and we truly believe that we are at a point where we're going to see, many of these projects, especially with governments and startups, really creating progress. So it's really, really good.
Fantastic. I've got sort of two more questions for all the panelists. I'm going to ask the same one across. In your view, what does a sustainable Asia look like in 10 to 20 years? And what is the silver bullet or critical actions that we need to take now to ensure that we meet that vision? Osawa-san, maybe you could go first.
Sure. Yes, I think the current status in Asia is very unique, which is quite different from that is in EMEA or in the US. So we really need to focus on the practical way. We need to be realistic. And so, say, in 10 to 20 years, we need a mixture of technologies and solutions, including what I mentioned earlier as interim solutions. And so it really will not be the pure renewable society. It will be different kinds of solutions in these regions. And I would say the mindset of all the stakeholders will really be the key, maybe including consumers, because some of the technologies are a bit costly. And we really need to think about how we can embrace those changes in the regions. But yeah, this is a diversified culture nation, but I believe we can do it.
Great.
Yeah, I think Asia is quite diverse, right? There's very advanced economies like Japan or Singapore. There's very emerging economies. So I would say broadly for the emerging economies, the promise is just like we leapfrogged in things like telecommunications and civil aviation, that we short circuit. We don't go through the whole kind of build up in the conventional way that advanced economies in the West did, and then start to decarbonize and green. And we just short circuit and say we should grow the right way in the first place. And I think that's really the best hope. And we need the technologies, we need the financing. We have projects, for example, with Microsoft and the US state government that we are doing, State Department of the federal government, where we're trying to improve the pathway itself and find a green way, find a more efficient way, find a less resource-intensive way to do things as we grow. And I think that's really the hope and the future.
So in my case, I believe the center of gravity already changed to Asia. Asia today is the center, the hub of innovation for the world, and most of the most sophisticated AI projects I'm seeing here. I do believe we should aim to become the hub of sustainability for the world. And I believe the answer for that, at least for me, it's at the intersection of education and technology. So I grew up, I remember when I grew up and I got my driver license, my parents were not used to put to fasten the seat belts. And I was the one that was educated to do that. Then I have my kids, and when they were little, I was going to go and brush the teeth with them. They would turn off the water because I just let the water go when I'm brushing my teeth. So my point here is, if you start at early ages educating this is important. At that time, water was not important for me when I was a kid, but fasten seatbelts was, right? So I think if we continue to invest in education in the region, and have the intersection of technology. The region has 2/3 of the developers of the world are sitting in Asia. So we could really become the hub for sustainability for the rest of the world. There's no reason to not aim that.
Yeah. And I think absolutely we should be aiming for that. One sentence from each of you to close off this session. What do you think is the biggest hurdle in trying to balance sustainability through sort of the people, profit, and planet in Asia? What's the biggest hurdle in trying to balance all of that?
I would say the mindset to have cooperative, collective endeavors in the region, because this is not the game where the limited people will be winning. So it's always a collective effort. So I think the biggest hurdle is a mindset, but again, I think we can all overcome that hurdle.
Mindsets can change.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a similar vein, I would say the lack of adequate awareness across all the segments, from government to corporates to society, about the scale of the problem, its implications, and the possibilities. I think the more everybody knows, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, I think I'm going to repeat a little bit, because I don't think this is a problem where, companies or government or academia can solve by themselves. This is a problem that we have to be all together to go and solve. And we need the right incentives and the right purpose behind, but this is a problem for now. This is not a problem for the next generation.
Thank you, my esteemed panelists, and clearly this is the right combination of a panel to be on: the technology, the government, and the financial institutions. So we look forward to next year's SFF, where we can be talking about how much we've advanced. I think COP will be very interesting in Azerbaijan next week, so look forward to all the big announcements as well. So thank you everyone for joining us on this panel. Please give our esteemed speakers a round of warm applause.
Thank you.